Hello, welcome to the Belk on Business podcast. This is Josh Belk, and I appreciate you joining the show today, and I hope to provide value to you on this episode. If you do get value out of this episode, please do me a huge favor and make sure to subscribe to this podcast. And if you're on Apple Podcast, leave me a 5-star review. Thanks again for listening, and enjoy the show. Hello, hope you're having a wonderful day. My name is Josh Belk. This is the Belk on Business podcast. Today we're going to approach the topic, and one I get asked quite frequently, and I think this really gets to the point of understanding is your one of the first steps in understanding if your business is profitable. I'll talk about that in a future podcast, but we're going to talk a little bit about today as far as what should I pay myself. I think all of us get into business for primarily, of course, we have a purpose that's beyond just making money, but if our business isn't making money, we're going to close it down, or we're going to be forced to close it down. So one big question that we get asked is, as a business owner, what should I be paying myself? And this is not necessarily an easy question to answer, because the question many times is, it depends. What are we trying to do here? If we're talking about tax strategy, we're talking about taxation, tax compliance, then we use this word reasonableness. Okay, so that'd be one way that we'd look at it. If we're talking about what you need to take out of the business, that becomes a little bit of a different conversation. But essentially, when I have this question of what should I be paying myself in my business, we many times go through many different steps to try to determine what that number should be. But I think most importantly, when we begin to have that conversation, it really needs to be held in light, is my business truly profitable? I know there's a big craze out there, as far as, setting up all these bank accounts and having an owner's pay account and all these different accounts set up and have these accounting hacks out there. And that's all fine and good. I guess there's a place for that, especially if it's a small business and you're having a difficult time with the discipline aspect of it. But if you have half a mind for business sense, I don't think you need all that. I think you really need to kind of simplify matters and really kind of look at if you can't pay yourself in your business, okay, if you have to use some sort of a hack, then I'm going to probably guess that you really don't have a functioning business, okay, or whether or not you have a business at all. So trying to determine what you need to pay yourself, here are some things you need to consider. First of all, what would it cost to replace you and your duties in the business? Okay, owner's pay is not a separate category in a business. Okay, I understand if you're talking about an S-corp tax return, there's a line on there. I think it's line 6 on the return that shows owner's salary, owner's pay, but really you as an owner of the business essentially need to pay yourself as an employee in your business. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through this, but you need to look at what are your duties in the business. What is it going to take if you were to replace yourself in the business? Myself as Josh in my business, what would it cost to replace myself in the business? And I'm not talking about those intangible types of that intangible value that comes into the business that I bring. Okay, but what I'm talking about is the day-to-day task that I perform in my business. So what would it cost to bring somebody in to manage the business? What would it cost for me to bring somebody in to run the day-to-day? So that's one element I'm going to look at. If I can't pay myself that much, okay, enough to just make sure that my duties and responsibilities are covered and whatever value that is to my business, then I really need to begin to evaluate my business. Okay, so what would it cost to replace myself in the business? And this really kind of lends to the reasonableness aspect of the pay. So I need to really be looking at what would it cost to replace myself and my duties in the business. So what are the duties that I perform? I need to look at other businesses in the same industry and see, okay, well, for my position, what are other businesses paying for that position? And as the owner, most of the time, you can also look to statistics. Usually as an owner in a small business, my salary will generally range, and statistics tell us somewhere between 40 to 60% of the net income of the business. So I take the net income before my pay, and that's about what it should be most of the time. Secondly, how much time and effort are you putting into the business? So that becomes one factor, or another factor that I'm going to look at. If my business only requires me to be in the business 10 hours a week, okay, then my salary can be lower. But if it's my full-time gig, it's my full-time job, okay, and I'm not talking about, I don't think any business owner should be looked at as their job, but if it's your full, what you do full-time, how much time and effort are you putting into the business and making sure that your salary covers it? Thirdly, look at your personal budget and determine what you need to pay yourself and your personal bills. And this usually is one of the first questions I'll ask. Okay, you need to take a look at your personal finances. it's not fair to my employees, the people that I'm bringing on, if I don't have a lifestyle that's under control. Okay, but I really do need to look at what do I need out of my business to be able to pay my personal bills, and this also become part of the analysis that I'm going to use in order to determine what my salary should be. So what would it cost to replace my duties in the business? How much time am I spending in the business? And then what do I need from the business? And I think we also need to look at the taxation element of it. Look at the taxation element. Is my salary high enough to cover my tax liabilities? And this is something, to be honest with you, I rarely ever hear talk about. And it's something that for our client that we talk about regularly. So I'm going to say, okay, is your salary high enough to be able to cover your personal living expenses? Does it make sense from the duties that you're performing in the business? But also, I want to structure that in a way to where I'm not having to use another accounting hack to put money into a savings account or a checking account somewhere to pay my tax liabilities. I want that to be done regularly in the business. So that salary is high enough so I'm paying enough money in to cover my tax liabilities as well. So just a few different things that you're going to want to look at. And forget all these accounting hacks out there, having these owner pay accounts, these tax accounts, all these other things. Have a different conversation. And have that conversation as far as what am I doing in my business? Is the money I'm pulling out of my business reasonable? Is it compensating me adequately for the time that I'm putting into the business? And also, does it cover my tax liabilities? So it systemizes the process. So just a few different thoughts there in regards to paying yourself. And in a future podcast, we're going to talk about the profitability of our business. And is my business truly profitable? And I think some of this will lend into that particular discussion. I appreciate you listening today. Once again, this is Josh Belk. I encourage you to subscribe to the Belk on Business podcast.